The 88th minute at Lusail Stadium. 88,000 people watching a quarterfinal that felt all but finished. Then Leandro Paredes slid in late on Nathan Akay near the touchline. The whistle went, and instead of walking away, he turned and drove the dead ball at full force straight into the Dutch substitute's bench. 60 seconds. That's roughly how long it took for a controlled night to come apart, and for a question to hang over Argentine football that people still ask today. Why did the referee let him stay on the pitch? Hold on to that question, because the answer says more about that match than the final score ever did. December 9th, 2022, a World Cup quarterfinal in Qatar, and Argentina were managing the game the way winning teams do. Cynical fouls, slow restarts, small provocations. The kind of football that looks ugly from the outside but works. What Paredes did in that moment wasn't game management though. It was something closer to a spark thrown into a room already full of fumes, and everyone on that Netherlands bench felt it land.
Watch the sequence back and the timing is what stands out. The foul on Ake was already a caution waiting to happen, a late challenge in a corner of the pitch where nothing needed to happen. But Paredes didn't stop there. He picked out the opposition dugout, the coaches, the players waiting to come on, and he hammered the ball into them like he was taking a free kick at goal. Bodies scattered, men who weren't even part of the play suddenly ducking for cover. And in that instant, the match stopped being about Argentina versus the Netherlands and started being about one player and his temper.
So how subscribe to the channel? Because once you start watching for these turning points, substitutes and staff poured onto the grass. And from the other side of the pitch, 30 yards away, Virgil van Dijk came sprinting. He reached Paredes before Paredes could even square up to the dugout he'd just targeted, and he flattened him with a shoulder barge that put the Argentine on the turf. That was the trigger. Players from both squads collided in the middle of it, shoving, pulling, shouting. Coaching staff dragged into the scrum. What had been a tense quarterfinal turned into a touchline brawl in front of a global audience, and the man who started it was still lying on the ground. What happened next was strange. After all of that, the late tackle, the ball fired into human beings, the mass confrontation that followed, referee Antonio Mateu Lahoz reached into his pocket and produced a single yellow card for Paredes. One caution, not for the foul separately and the ball separately, just one, covering the whole sequence. Broadcasters watching live couldn't quite believe it. Pundits argued that firing a ball at opposition staff was, on its own, worth a straight dismissal, and that combining it with a reckless challenge left the official no room for leniency. Yet leniency is exactly what Paredes got. That decision became one of the most criticized officiating calls of the entire tournament, and it fed directly into what happened next. Mateu Lahoz lost the thread of the match completely. By the final whistle, the game had entered the record books for reasons no referee ever wants. 18 yellow cards. The most ever shown in a single World Cup fixture before or since. Add the red card handed to Netherlands defender Denzel Dumfries after the penalty shootout, and you have a scoreline of bookings that reads like a police report. They gave the match a nickname afterward, the Battle of Lusail, and the origin of that battle traces right back to those 60 seconds. The consequences didn't stay on the touchline either. The chaos rattled Argentina in a way the Netherlands could feed off, and in the 101st minute, Wout Weghorst slotted home an equalizer that dragged the quarterfinal into extra time. A game Argentina had been closing out with 2-1 was suddenly level, and the momentum had swung toward the team that had just been provoked. Argentina survived on penalties in the end, but the version of them that walked off the pitch that night was no longer the disciplined side that had led at 88 minutes. It was a team that had let a moment of aggression nearly cost them everything. If this breakdown is landing for you, take a second to hit like. It's a small thing, but it genuinely helps the algorithm push this story to more people who remember that night and never got the full picture. For almost 2 years, most fans filed the incident away as a mistake, a player losing his head under pressure, miskicking a clearance, letting frustration get the better of him. A bad moment, sure, but an accident. That's the story that settled in. Then Paredes sat down for an interview in September 2024, nearly 2 years after lifting the trophy, and quietly dismantled it. Asked about the strike into the Dutch bench, he smiled, and he said the shot was on purpose. 100% intentional. Now that enough time had passed, he explained, they could finally say it out loud. That confession changed how the whole thing reads, because an accident can be forgiven, and a loss of control can be understood. What Paredes described was neither. It was a choice, made deliberately, aimed at people who had no part in the play, and his reasoning made it sharper still. He tied the whole thing back to comments made before the match by the Dutch manager, Louis van Gaal, and by Netherlands players, remarks that had clearly stayed with him. So when the whistle blew in the 88th minute, this wasn't heat of the moment. It was payback he'd been carrying, waiting for a chance to deliver. That reframes everything about how Argentina were seen during that tournament. They were a supremely gifted side, on their way to a title many believed they deserved. But moments like this handed their critics all the ammunition they needed. Opponents and neutral observers alike started using a word that stings any champion: dirty. The idea took hold that this was a team willing to cross lines that others wouldn't, and one deliberate kick into a dugout became the clearest evidence anyone could point to. A single act, admitted years later, doing lasting damage to how an entire squad's triumph gets remembered. The 2022 story matters now, rather than sitting as an old highlight, because a pattern only becomes a pattern when it repeats. If those 60 seconds in Qatar had stayed a one-off, they'd be a footnote. A wild night, a strange refereeing call, a nickname for a chaotic match. The problem is that they didn't stay a one-off. 4 years later, on the biggest stage the sport has, the same player found the same breaking point, and this time there was no lenient referee to soften the fallout.
July 19th, 2026, MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The World Cup Final, Argentina against Spain, and this time the night didn't go their way. Spain won it 1-0 in extra time, and the final whistle should have marked the end of it. Instead, it marked a beginning. Moments after the game finished, Paredes grabbed Spain defender Eric Garcia by the throat. He then threw 21-year-old Gavi to the turf. A brawl erupted on the pitch of the final itself, and the sight of Argentina's own head coach, Lionel Scaloni, stepping in to separate the players and restore calm told you everything about how far things had gone. This time, the punishment matched the act. Referee Slavko Vincic showed Paredes a straight red card after the match, the discipline the 2022 official never handed him. Where Qatar gave him a caution and a shrug, MetLife gave him the dismissal his behavior had been building toward for 4 years. And the international reaction was swift and unforgiving. Media outlets that had once condemned the 2022 kick as a blatant provocation now had a second data point, a clear one, and it removed any doubt about what they were watching. 2 World Cups, 2 brawls, the same man at the center of both.
Put the two nights side by side, and the through line is impossible to miss. In 2022, Argentina were winning, and he still found a way to detonate the game. In 2026, they were losing, and he did it again. This time aimed at teenagers and defenders who'd just beaten them fairly. Victory didn't calm him. Defeat didn't teach him. The trigger wasn't the scoreline at all. It was something in how he responds when a match reaches its most charged moment, and that consistency across over 3.5 years is what turns a viral clip into a genuine reputation. Not one bad night, a habit. That's the quiet damage of it. Argentina will always be remembered as a team of extraordinary talent, and rightly so. But talent isn't the only thing that follows a national side through history. Conduct follows too, especially on the sport's grandest occasions when the whole planet is watching. A deliberate strike into a bench in one quarterfinal, a hand around a throat in the next, and suddenly the story of a golden generation carries an asterisk it never needed. Not because they lacked ability, because one player, in 2 separate moments 4 years apart, gave the world a different image to hold on to. And maybe that's the hardest truth in all of this. Reputations aren't built only in the 90 minutes that count. They're built in the seconds after the whistle, when nobody's keeping score anymore and a person shows you who they are. Paredes had 2 of those moments on the biggest stage football offers, 4 years apart, and both times he made the same choice. The referee in Qatar looked away. The referee in New Jersey didn't, but the record now speaks for itself, and no confession or red card can rewrite it. If this story stayed with you the way it stays with the people who saw those nights unfold, like this video and subscribe. There are more moments like this hiding in plain sight, and they're worth remembering honestly. If this story stayed with you the way it stays with the people who saw those nights unfold, like this video and subscribe. There are more moments like this hiding in plain sight, and they're worth remembering honestly.